When I say, who's the master? You say,
What is up, guys? Showing up the King here, back with another video, and today I am bringing you my review for Doom Patrol Season 1, Episode 2. I have to admit, guys, I absolutely love this show. I love this show. This show is a mixture between a fucked up Addams family mixed with like shades of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I almost feel like Joss Whedon had his hand in this series because just the interesting people and characters that are in this show, just it's a fantastic show. It's not one of those shows where you're gonna get a lot of action, and for some reason I still love it. But before I get into the review this week, again, it's time for the shameless plugs. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are now over 600 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. Um, my channel has also hit a milestone. I have over 500,000 lifetime views on my channel. And again, I know that might not seem like a lot to some YouTubers, but to me, that's an own personal goal. I can't wait till I get to my first 1,000 subscribers. Maybe I'll be able to get monetized again. That's looking at you, YouTube, take away my monetization, but it's all right. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the love of the media. So subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the Mag Nerd podcast. We should be recording an episode this week, kind of talking about the Vic Mignogna situation, updating you guys, as well as in the music, we'll be talking about Jussie Smollett and that whole situation again, and some other great stuff. So definitely stay tuned for that. Without further ado, I'm going to try to keep this review to about 10-15 minutes. I know usually I run about 20-30 minutes for my reviews, but again, just analytics wise, I feel like the younger audience, they only have the attention span between 10 and 15 minutes. If you guys do prefer the longer reviews, just let me know in the comment section. But again, I'll try to condense this review / discussion down to about 10-15 minutes. If I'm being realistic, it's probably going to be more like 15 minutes, but we'll see. So Doom Patrol Season 2. So what I want to do is I want to talk about this just top character to character, okay? So let's talk about Mr. Nobody. So Mr. Nobody, who is our main narrator and our main villain of the series, or at least for the season, yet again he comes through with the fantastic commentary, and again just throwing jabs at the public, kind of a la Deadpool style. Today at the beginning of the episode, he comes out and he's talking to Niles, and he's kind of like, Niles asking him, who are you talking to? And he's like, oh, Reddit trolls with DC subscriptions and the 3 people who stuck around after the donkey fart. So that actually had me dying. It was hilarious. And again, he later on comes out into the episode. We get to know more about his beef with Niles, but then again, we learn more about his issues with how his powers work. Because again, I am not familiar with the source material for Doom Patrol. So again, I'm kind of learning this as we go along. So again, any kind of like information that they reveal, and again, of course, I can always look it up on Wikipedia. And I looked up some things. Like I understand that Mr. Nobody's his main ability is that he can basically drain the sanity out of people. So essentially, he basically makes you go crazy. So it's kind of funny. So Mr. Nobody provided us with a lot of great commentary this episode, as well as his things that we'll talk about later. So that was just I kind of wanted to talk about at the beginning of Mr. Nobody's abilities. Now, who does this episode focus around? So this episode focuses around Crazy Jane, Robot Man again. We also get our introduction to Cyborg, and actually I want to start with Cyborg because he was actually quite the surprise. I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed this origin story of Cyborg, and just his character interaction with the group just as quickly as it happened. And what I mean by that is I wanted to just talk about kind of like how he looks in regards to how he looked in the Justice League movies. In the Justice League movies, he was kind of like put together through the mother box. That's kind of how his programming has been done. They kind of went with a more And again, it's probably for budgetary concerns. It kind of went with a more realistic view on how a cyborg would look. It's like real prosthetics on his face versus like CGI. And I actually think that goes really well with the character. It looks like again, it's like more the side of his face is robotic and he can still eat and still be human. So it looks like from the explosion that happened that ended up killing his mom, and you find that out later, which we'll go into a little bit more detail later. But it looks like his arms, his leg, and half of his face is with cybernetic, and it looks like everything else is fine. So that's kind of how this cyborg works. Now, another big noticeable difference is that this cyborg actually has a pretty decent relationship with his dad. Like we do know from like the Justice League movie as well as the animated version of the movie that had came out. Even in Young Justice, the relationship that Vic had with his dad was not good. You know, Vic's dad was always obsessed with work and didn't really pay any attention to anything that Vic did. And, you know, Vic was just trying to get his dad's attention. And in doing so, you know, it kind of put a strain on their relationship. So we can already tell that in this series so far, Vic's dad has just been giving him upgrades and they kind of have a pretty decent relationship. It's more of a overbearing parent kind of thing where Vic is his dad is actually training him to kind of get into the Justice League within the next 5 years or less, depending on how things go. But it's kind of like they are working together in order to get this done. It was not like it was in the Young Justice or how it was in the actual Justice League movie, where again Vic had a lot of animosity towards his dad. He hated his dad, and he basically blamed his dad for everything that happened to him, and he just turn bad. I actually like this turn for Vic. I do. I like seeing him and his father. You can still tell that they had some issues, but again, I do appreciate them kind of having some sort of relationship so we can develop on this character. Again, so we do find out with Vic does have history with Niles. He comes to the house, and you know we kind of get a flashback of how his mom died in a fire, and how he basically before he became cyborg, and how he knows Niles is that Niles is friends with his dad, and Niles kind of came through and kind of gave him the eye that to help with the Cybertronics. So that's kind of how the Doom Patrol knows Vic. That's kind of how they integrated the people together. So that's what's going on. That was for the most part what was going on with Vic in the episode. Now let's talk about Rita real quick. So Rita had an some interesting dialogue. So she didn't play a huge role as well as Negative Man. So Negative Man basically wanted to cut and run. He kind of had this thing where he kept going to the bus station, but his non-corporeal self kept, forcing him to come back. He wouldn't allow him to leave. I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of funny. And then later on, they kind of play a role with the donkey. And again, I'll talk about the donkey when I'm doing the recap. But the overall recap. So what happens is the donkey we find out is a key. All right. So the key he's a portal. He opens up this portal to where Mr. Nobody is, where the entire townspeople is, where Niles is. The donkey also spits out Jane. And again, I'll talk about Jane around the same time I talk about Robot Man, because again, those two share a unique bond with each other. I know last week I had mentioned that I didn't know if Robot Man cared about her like he was attracted to her, or was it kind of like a father-daughter thing? And we do kind of confirm that it's more like a father-daughter thing, which is great. By the way, I know I'm just kind of like scatterbrained, but I love Brendan Fraser. I said this in the last episode, but I love Brendan Fraser. Don't talk shit about Brendan Fraser. His voice acting for this role is fantastic. If you don't like Brendan Fraser, fuck you. All right. So anyway, so what happens is Rita is debating whether or not she wants to help the group. And there's this scene where we find out that the donkey is a portal, and we know because Rita can adjust her molecular structure and turn into a blob, she could go inside the donkey and kind of see what's going on. So there's a scene where it's Vic, Negative Man, and Rita. They're all outside, and then she's like, "Absolutely not. You're not gonna what do you just want for my amusement? You want to just grab a trash bag and cut a little hole in it and just shove me down this syphilitic beast? It was like it was hilarious. So she called the donkey a syphilitic beast, and she called it some other shit too. But the one that stood out to me was the syphilitic beast. Like it was her whole attitude towards the whole thing was just hilarious. Like you guys, it's this show is so smart. Like again, it knows what it is, and it's just playing that role so well. And like the characters, they all just match together. I love this show. And again, I'm usually an action junkie, so usually for me, I like to see a lot of action when I watch my programs. But with this, it doesn't even bother me. Like I'm enjoying the hell out of this show. But I digress. So Rita kind of had her moment. I love that whole syphilis beast comment that she made. It was hilarious. All right, let's talk about Crazy Jane and Robot Man. Again, Robot Man continues to be my favorite character, and Crazy Jane though is starting to climb up there as being one of my favorite characters because, and she actually might be one of the most powerful characters even too because apparently, Crazy Jane again has 64 multiple personalities, and each of those multiple personalities have their own power. From this episode, we found out that Katie, which is the more recluse of the personalities, is the one that saw something with happen with Niles when he got sucked into the donkey. But the problem is that Katie does not like to be interrogated, which we find out what happens is that Katie turns into a giant flame monster, kind of like Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four. She basically flamed on and kind of gave Vic a couple of singes. It was fantastic, and again, the CG on that was done very well. Through the actual episode, you do find out some of her other abilities as well. We do know that one of her abilities is that she kind of has like a prognostication. I probably butchered that, but basically she's like a precog where she can kind of see a little bit into the future and through painting. So one of her at the end of the episode, you kind of see her painting and you see her painting a grim future for the group. Now again, whether those things are guaranteed to come true, we don't know. We also see while Robot Man is going through some of the tapes trying to learn more about Jane, that some of her abilities have her being able to stick to walls. We have other abilities that let her teleport. Through her fight with Robot Man that we get later on, we figure out that she also has electricity powers as well. And as well as her fight with Robot Man, we figure out that she also has. I don't even know how to describe this power, but it's actually awesome. It's crazy as shit. Like she kind of has like, and it's funny how her face changes and like her whole persona changes. Like when she turns into baby doll, like you can tell she has like barrettes in her head and in her hair. It's weird. And then when she turns, I don't even know what this. I don't even know what the personality's name was, but it's ability was it she could talk, and whatever she talks it like comes out in actual words. So like she was like, so she'll say you're so fucked, and then as actually you're so fucked comes out of her mouth and it turns into a weapon and she like puts it up to the neck of like Robot Man. And also what happens is that she says something else and then she can turn that word into a weapon and she turns into a katana. And I'm just sitting here like, yo, this chick is powerful as fuck. like like seriously. So we have all of that going on. And again, I know I'm jumping around, but again, I just want to make sure that I kind of touch on each character's moments of the episode. We also have Robot Man, where again he is being trying to be the leader, and I love at the very beginning of the episode where Robot Man he realizes that Jane and I guess what I need to do is give a brief description of how this episode flows. So at the beginning of the episode, we get the continuation of the ground being opened up and sucking Jane in with Niles, and they get sucked into the portal. Later on, she does come out of the donkey, like I mentioned, and that's how we get that interaction with her and Robot Man. So when Robot Man sees Jane get swallowed up by the hole, he kind of has like this freak out where he's like, "Holy shit! Holy shit!" Like, and again, it's hilarious because anybody would have a brain would react that same way, where Rita's kind of like, "We get your point," and he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm not the one who just saw a fucking hole come into the open up and get swallowed the whole town." Like, again, just the interactions between the cast is so well done. I love this show. So what ends up happening is the group all figures out, goes into the donkey. We kind of meet up with Mr. Nobody, and Mr. Nobody ends up putting everybody into their own little personal hell, where you kind of learn a little bit more about Vic, and that's where we figure out that how he became a robot in this series is that there was an explosion at their house. He survived, but his body was mangled, and his mom did not make it. And you actually see her body burning in the background. You kind of see with Rita where they kind of put her in a role where she's like having a perfect life being an actress. And then we also see Negative Man. He's kind of like back in the fighter pilot jet and doing his thing. But what happens is that with Mr. Negative, with Mr. Nobody, he's kind of twisting that to kind of mess with the group and kind of, mess with them mentally. So again, very interesting powers. Um, but I want to get back to Robot Man because again, I want to kind of touch on just two different things. So we had his freak out at the beginning, but we also kind of get more development with him because again, we do realize that he really does care about Jane, and as he's trying to help her, we've realized that Katie, which is the recluse the recluse personality, she comes out and attacks Vic, and then Robot Man kind of comes in to save her, and then she basically proceeds to whoop both their ass. And there's like this hilarious scene which kind of reminds me on an episode of Buffy where Robot Man is getting tossed around the house by Crazy Jane, and then Rita and Negative Man kind of come out, and they're just kind of like, Larry and Rita are talking, and he's like, Larry knocks on Rita's door and is like, "Hey, you want to come outside for a while?" And she was like, "Why?" And then you kind of see Robot Man fly across the room, and then Jane kind of like walk past and look at him and just keep going. And she's like, Rita's like, "I could use some air." And then again, you just see like Robot Man come back into the frame and he gets tossed around. Eventually, Vic steps in and they get her locked up and contained. And then we have this like tender moment where Robot Man has another flashback of his daughter and how he's making her a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So he thinks that's a good idea to kind of help Rita, to kind of help Jane. And Jane kind of gives him this snarky response of 11 of us are allergic to peanut butter, 6 of us don't like bread, and then all of us are not your fucking daughter. So just kind of reminding him, like, look, I know you think that we're your daughter, but we're not. Like, and again, it hurts his feelings. You can kind of tell, but then later on, once she actually regains herself, you kind of figure out like she does come back and ask him to make her a sandwich. So again, I thought that was very sweet. So Robot Man is able to kind of salvage things with Jane, and then everything is quote unquote back to normal. And what ends up happening at the end of the episode is that Negative Man comes out and he's able to free the town and free the rest of the group. We don't really find out exactly how he does it with his powers, but the town of Cloverton actually does come back as whole. It doesn't just get spit out, and the donkey ends up dying. The donkey explodes, but it's just kind of nice to see how everything was back to normal. And again, like overall, I really enjoyed this episode. We didn't get a lot of action outside of Vic fighting a bunch of criminals at the beginning, and I really kind of like how he was able to uh, circumvent his voice and his power through the ATM and kind of talk to the villains. That's kind of how we get introduced to Cyborg. That was probably like the closest thing to action we had in this episode. And again, I'm pretty sure there'll be time for that in the show. But right now, as it stands, I don't need it. Like, I don't need a bunch of crazy stuff like that. I just love seeing these group of people together. I like seeing their interactions with each other. And I just kind of like seeing how they develop to become a great team. And I do think that Cyborg is going to try to be the leader. He kind of has that leader quality, and he is kind of like fitting right into the group as well. So hopefully this is about 10, 15 minutes. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Have you got an opportunity to go look at Doom Patrol? Let me know what you think about the show in the comments section below. And again, just let me know about this format. Do you like the longer reviews? Do you like the shorter reviews? Just let me know. Show Up the King. Have a great day.